You think you're important. You've got a smartphone, a LinkedIn profile, a government ID, and a credit score. You think you're the one doing the surveillance. You think you're the protagonist of this little story we call civilization? Ha! Wrong. You're being tracked by a bird that eats French fries off the sidewalk and screams at its own shadow for fun. And honestly, based on the way you're standing, it's probably judging your outfit right now. We're obsessed with digital privacy, aren't we? We put little sliding tape covers over our webcams like we're in a low-budget spy movie. Terrified the NSA is watching us scroll through brain-rotting memes at 2 a.m. We worry about cookies, trackers, IP addresses, and metadata. We think if we just use an encrypted messaging app, we're invisible. But there's a surveillance network operating on your sidewalk right now that makes the NSA look like a group of toddlers with walkie-talkies. I'm talking about crows. Let's be clear, they aren't birds. They're feathered supercomputers that happen to have wings. And the scariest part? They're social. They talk. They gossip. And they have a memory that puts your pathetic human brain to absolute shame. Think back. You were mean to a crow in 2019, weren't you? Maybe you shooed it away from your sandwich. Maybe you threw a rock at it because you were having a bad day. You forgot about it 5 seconds later. You're human. You have the memory of a goldfish on a bad day. You can't even remember where you put your car keys this morning, let alone a bird you annoyed 3 years ago. But the crow? It told its friends. It told its kids. It told its neighbor's cousin. It uploaded your high-resolution profile into a decentralized local database. Congratulations, Dave. You're now a registered villain in the local Crow-munity database. You're basically the John Wick of the backyard, but instead of professional hitmen, you've got a dozen birds dive-bombing your head every time you try to get the mail. And it gets worse. Biologists actually tested this. They wore creepy rubber masks to harass crows. Just a mask, nothing else. The birds remembered the faces. They didn't just remember the individual researcher, they remembered the mask. Years later, they would dive bomb, scream at, and harass anyone wearing that specific mean mask. But here's the part that actually keeps me up at night. They taught their babies to do it too. The birds that were actually harassed eventually died off. But the new generation, the chicks that weren't even born when the experiment happened, they were still screaming at the mask. Think about the implications of that. They have a generational blacklist. They are teaching their babies to hate you. I don't even remember the name of my third-grade teacher, and these birds are out here passing down generational trauma like it's a family heirloom. We like to think we're the masters of this planet. We're the ones with the thumbs, right? We're the ones who invented the internet. We feel so big because we can order a pizza from our phones. But we're also the only species dumb enough to walk outside without knowing who's on the blacklist. We are walking around in a world that is actively auditing our behavior, and we're too distracted by our own podcasts to notice. Why does this make us so uncomfortable? It's because it destroys our narrative of the natural order. We love to imagine ourselves as the protagonist of the planet. We think nature is just a place we visit, a park, a hiking trail, a backyard. We think of animals as props. But when you realize the bird on the wire is actively cataloging your behavior, the protagonist role shifts. Suddenly, you aren't the observer. You're the subject. You're the data point. We've spent 10,000 years building civilizations designed to shield us from the raw animal world. We live in boxes, we talk to screens, we order our food from apps. We've effectively removed ourselves from the sensory loop of the planet. But the crow? The crow never left. The crow is still perfectly tuned in to the frequency of the wild, and it is using that tuning to navigate the modern human world. They've hacked our infrastructure, they use our trash for food, they use our buildings for nests, they use our noise to camouflage their calls. They aren't living in our world, they are living on top of our world, exploiting the gaps we leave behind because we're too busy staring at our own reflections in the screen to notice them. If a crow decides you're a threat, your privacy is effectively over. You can change your password, you can buy a VPN, you can wear a hoodie. But a crow knows your gait. It knows the exact rhythm of your walk. It recognizes the specific way you slump your shoulders when you're tired.
And you know what the worst part is? You can't even appeal the decision. There's no human resources department for the crow community. There's no, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to take your crust button. Once you're in the system, you're in the system. But there's a lesson here. We often talk about AI and digital privacy, and we get terrified that computers are watching us, that we're being tracked, that our data is being collected and shared. And we should be. But we forget that the most sophisticated surveillance network on Earth isn't made of silicon. It's made of feathers, bone, and a really, really long memory. So here's my advice. Next time you're walking down the street, feeling like you're alone, look up. Find that crow. See it looking back at you, head tilted, eyes black and glassy. Don't look at it like a bird. Look at it like an interface. It's a node in a network that knows more about your daily habits than you do. It's a historian of your past, a judge of your present, and a guardian of your reputation among the species that actually run the planet. Give it a nod. Maybe offer it a piece of your lunch. The good stuff, not the cheap processed trash. You're not just feeding a bird. You're bribing an intelligence agency. You're buying a little bit of goodwill from the only ones who are actually paying attention. And please, for their love, check your jacket. If you've been marked, you're going to have a very long, very loud walk home. You aren't just a person walking to work anymore. You're a person of interest, and you'd better hope that, for the sake of your reputation among the crows, you've been acting like one. Because the forest never forgets, and the wire is always listening. It's actually kind of impressive when you think about it. We think we're so clever with our facial recognition software, our biometrics, our massive data centers cooling in the desert. We're so proud of our ability to track people. But these birds were doing it before we even had a word for privacy. They were doing it before we had houses. They were doing it when we were just primates trying to figure out how to stop the rain from getting in our ears. We're the ones playing catch-up. We're the ones playing a game that we don't even realize we're losing. Every time you walk past a tree, you're passing a sensor. Every time you sit on a bench, you're being logged. You think you're in public, but you're actually in a giant, open-air, cross-generational server rack. So, yeah, next time you feel like you're being watched, you're probably right. But don't look at the cameras on the street corner. Look at the guy on the wire. He's the one who's really keeping the logs, and he's got a very, very long memory. It's been a pleasure knowing you, Dave. Try not to annoy the neighbors on your way home. It's a long walk, and the crows are listening.